afternoon, I'm Dom Van and welcome to my vlog. Afternoon and welcome to me vlog. And today, not in the best moods to be honest, and it's been like that for a few days really, as I look at Brexit and how that impacts me and my family, those weirdos travelling on our van. So yeah, we've all known about Brexit for many years. Obviously we've gone into a no deal and we're now a few weeks away with Christmas and New Year in the middle of that, before January the 1st, when the transition period ends and all of the changes that affect us come into place. So I've looked at the top 10 things that affect van lifers and Moho travellers, people wishing to travel for a reasonable length of time from January the 1st, 2021. It's not all of the things that affect us, but it's the top 10. Not in any particular order, so it's not a top 10 as in number 1 is the worst or the best. And there's also, we've all been on social media and we've all seen the reports on the BBC and the Guardian and the Independent, the Daily Mail, etc. about the fact that France may not let us in on January the 1st. So it's trying to separate the scaremongery from the actual facts and actually see what the actual implications are. One of the big problems is if you go to the government website, half of the information is not there. So it says there will be changes affecting or impacting your travel from January the 1st, 2021, but it doesn't always tell you what those are. So for example, a lot of it hasn't been updated, so the IDP section hasn't been updated, the pet health section hasn't been updated, even though some of those things we've already been informed by the EU what the actuality is. So anyway, without further ado, let's have a look at the 10 things as a long-term traveller in a vehicle you need to be aware of from January the 1st. Some you'll be already well aware of, some I've covered off in previous videos, so I'm just going to summarise, and there's one big one that has a massive impact on our travelling next year, which hasn't been in the media to my knowledge, and it's something I came across through my own personal situation, so I'll tell you about that as well, so keep watching. So number 1 is indirectly a Brexit issue, which is COVID-19, and as a consequence of Brexit, England or the United Kingdom has been awarded a third country status. What that means in brief is, as we're not part of the EU and we're a third country, that technically speaking all countries or some countries in the EU could bar our entry on January the 1st onwards for an unknown period of time due to COVID restrictions. So in simple terms, currently during French lockdown, which has ended today, you could get in your camper van, Moho or van, and pootle across the Eurotunnel and come into France, no problems. So as of January the 1st, if they have COVID restrictions in place, they may decide to deny us entry on the third country basis like America and so on. The big problem with that is not just that we might be barred entry, but it's also, apart from all the stuff in the media that has scaremongered that information, which may be fully warranted, there isn't actually any information at the moment to state whether that is the case or not. We've had various ministers from the government in France and Spain giving their own personal opinion that we will be denied entry, but there is nothing on the government website or on the French website to confirm that that is the case. So at the moment, with just a couple of weeks till the new year, we still don't actually know whether we can gain access to the EU via France and the Eurotunnel. So number 2, IDPs. So again, the government website hasn't been updated. It simply states that you may require an IDP for some EU countries. So I've read an EU document from Brussels which states that IDPs won't be required when you come into Europe. However, this hasn't been verified on the government website. As I've said, it hasn't been updated, which is brilliant. So at the moment, we do know for sure that you don't need an IDP for Portugal or France. And Spain, you probably will require an IDP, other than the fact that I've read this document that says you won't. So again, as with point 1 and many of the other points, I'm going to have to go down the post office after Christmas and get myself an IDP for Spain at about £5 odd, which I may not require, assuming that the government website isn't updated before then. But I do think it's absolutely crazy that here we are 2 or more weeks away from January the 1st and you can't actually find out if you need an IDP for Spain on the government website, which hasn't been updated for weeks and weeks. I think it's a really poor show on behalf of the government, not at all constructive. But anyway, I did say I might need to vent. So number 3 is not a particularly major issue, but you will require a green card to get into the EU, which you get from your vehicle's insurance company. And this is basically just a worthless piece of paper, in my opinion, that says that you have insurance. So you need to print that off. The downside is it's generally free, but some insurance companies are charging £10 for it. So best case scenario, you've just got a bit of hassle printing it off. Worst case scenario, you're a tenner down and you've got the hassle of printing it off, but you do require a green card and you may need to show that at the border, and you would almost certainly need to show that if you were stopped by the police in whatever EU country you're visiting. Number 4, the e-hit card will no longer be in use or valid from January the 1st. So the government website advises that you must have travel or health insurance to enter the EU, and that you may be asked at border control to show that, or you may be asked by the police as you're travelling around if you have health insurance. The downside is pretty obvious. A lot of people relied purely on the e-hit card. We never took out private health care or health insurance to travel, but we do know many of our friends in motorhomers who are perhaps a little bit more cautious and careful, or even sensible to us, who would already have had health insurance when they travelled. But obviously either way, the downside is it's now a requirement, and it can be quite expensive and it can be quite difficult to get, particularly if you have underlying or ongoing health issues. So there could be quite a substantial cost involved there. We did some shopping around when we were last in the UK in advance, and there are quite a few where you can pay monthly and so on, so it is worth looking at all the different options that are available. And I will at some point in the future put up a little extra add-on to this and let you know who we went with and why. Number 5 is pets. So pets is actually slightly better than a lot of people, including ourselves, anticipated, because we were presuming that we would require the rabies tick-trick test. Not quite sure how you pronounce that, which takes 4 months to get if you don't already have it, but instead you now require an AHC, or Animal Health Certificate, which takes 21 or more days to get if your pets haven't been vaccinated for rabies, and you can only get it a maximum of 10 days before you're arriving in the EU. And it is quite a large document, so some vets may not have this document, or may take a while to process the document, so you need to ring your vet if you're coming over next year well in advance, make them aware that you're coming over, and then book in an appointment within the 10-day time frame so that you can collect your document, and it's dated so that it's still 10 days or less when you enter the EU or France or wherever you're travelling over to. So I haven't actually booked our vets yet, so I'm not aware of the cost, but again, there's an additional cost there for something that you wouldn't have had to do before, so it's all about money. So number 6 is actually probably one of the worst things, and it's one of the things that I've not seen any information online or in the media. When you go to the government website, it states that roaming may end in the EU, and the Tory government have passed a bill capping roaming costs at £45 per month versus the EU at €50 a month. But what the major providers in the UK have subsequently done is they've bypassed this and they've put a capping on roaming. So the maximum amount of data that you'll be able to use in the EU with a UK provider is 50 gigabytes per month, but you can only do so for a maximum of 62 days out of 120. So what that means in simple terms is if that you wanted to travel outside of the UK for longer than 62 days, is on the 63rd day you will be charged the roaming rates of your particular provider, which can be extremely expensive. Some of you, if you were on holiday 10 years or so more ago, you remember what a ridiculous price it was to send a text or use data whilst you were abroad, and that would now apply again on your 63rd day. So I checked on my provider and it was £6 per day per gig of data, 16 pence per text, and then up to 66 pence per minute for a call, depending on what kind of contract you have with your provider. I discussed this with a few other Vanlifers who didn't actually agree with me, and they said they'd checked their provider's website and it still states that roaming is in effect, which is correct. I've checked all the major providers, and when you go to say buy a new phone or look at your existing contract and what is in that contract, it says roaming, you have EU roaming. But it isn't till you get to the small print that you see that all the providers, and I have verified this with both Vodafone and EE over the phone, all UK providers, small and large, have all signed the same agreement. So after 62 days you won't have your allocated data for texts, downloads, uploads and so on. So for us it's a big one. So hypothetically our plans remained unchanged in that we travel in 8 to 12-week cycles generally, and then we go back to the UK to see our family and friends, so we can get ourselves an AHC and any other paperwork that we need to update. But if, for example, you wanted to travel for a year and you have pets, then your AHC will have expired and you wouldn't be able to use your mobile phone contract, because after the 62 days you've then got just under 2 months before that renews and you get another 62 days of data. So to protract things further, I've looked and I've asked all the UK providers if they intend to will do an EU contract which gives you unlimited data or a set amount of data and so on, and they've all stated they will not. So I've been looking at plans in Europe, which is a minefield, and I won't waffle on about that now, but once I've found out what we intend to do, I'll post that up as a separate video. But we're currently looking at MiFi boxes, localised contracts in France, Spain, Portugal and so on, so I'll cover that off in a separate video. So number 7, the Schengen Zone. I covered this off a week or so ago in a previous video in great depth with what the rules are, but the long and the short, without repeating that video, is that you can only travel for 90 out of 100 days in the zone. The UK is not part of the Schengen agreement, so therefore you are limited to that. So it means that instead of being freely able to move through the EU for longer than those 90 days, you will have to leave the EU and return to the UK before your 90 days has expired. So on the 90th day you need to be in the UK, or you need to be on your way to the UK, crossing over on your ferry or your Eurotunnel, or you've got to go to Croatia, Bulgaria, Morocco and so on. So whilst the 90 over 100 days is potentially easily manageable when you combine that with the points that I've already mentioned and your pet issues if you have pets and your mobile roaming, it all does start to become a bit of a tedious nightmare really, and it's only just really hit home just how frustrating it all is. It's very easy to say, well, it is what it is, so we'll run with that, and of course we will do that, but it is equally quite depressing really, if I'm quite honest. So number 8, I also mentioned in the Schengen video, which was there were strong rumours that Portugal was going to bring out an extended visa for travellers, and that has now been released. It's called the D7 visa, and it's in 2 parts, and it's designed for people that have an income that would be outside of Portugal initially, or who have savings or a pension, or basically you need to prove that you're able to be self-sufficient from a financial perspective when you are in Portugal. And it's like a prelude to residency of Portugal, so you need to either own land or a house, or have a permanent or long-term area where you're staying, be that on a campsite maybe, or at somebody else's address, but you need to provide an address for where you'll be living while you're in Portugal. You do have to spend a minimum of 183 days in any year in Portugal, but what that means in short, as a simple example, is if you wanted to, you could come out of the UK on the Eurotunnel or on your ferry, drive to Portugal. The time that you take to drive to Portugal would come out for your Schengen 90 days, but then when you're in Portugal, if you have the D7 visa, you could then stay there for 90 days, 80 days, 4 months, whatever you feel like, and then when you go back into Spain, your Schengen quota then remains as it was when you entered Portugal. So if you took 7 days to get into Portugal from the UK, you've still got 83 days left to spend in Spain. So you could apply for the D7 visa, and then rather than actually setting up shop in Portugal in a permanent residence or whatever, you could get yourself a little bit of land and then use that as part of your days in and out of the Schengen zone to manage so that you could stay outside of the UK for the entire year. So that's potentially good news if indeed you wanted to spend over 183 days a year in Portugal, but it's certainly something that we're going to be looking at, assuming we can get out in the new year. So number 9 is not a particularly devastating one, but again it is another kind of small irritation for some people, doesn't really apply to us, but you can no longer bring meat or dairy or milk across the border. So if you're like us and you tend to stock up before you leave, you won't be able to do that in terms of meat and milk. We're vegans, so we don't need meat or milk, so that's no problem for us, but obviously whilst it's not a major issue, does then mean that as soon as you get into France, you're not going to have any meat or milk if you eat that and drink that, use it for your cup of tea or whatever. So you'll have to then go off to the supermarket and get yourself some there. So not a major big deal, but just another little thing that's changing. And number 10, again, it's not a major one, but there could be substantial delays at border control, extra delays with increased searching of UK vehicles entering into an EU country, and then other minor irritations like if there are separate lanes for EU members or residents, you won't be allowed to use those, and there have been reports of quite substantial delays even though this is not quite in effect yet. So again, not a major issue, but just another little bit of icing on your fabulous Brexit cake. So there we have it, Brexit, the Christmas gift that just keeps on giving. So there we go, the top 10 things that you need to be aware of when travelling on or after January the 1st into the EU. So the one that frustrated me the most was the roaming issue, particularly as I can't easily find an alternative that's as convenient as just having a simple UK contract, but I will report back on that. I will update you as soon as any other news comes out regarding IDPs and or whether we can get into the EU through France on January the 1st, or when we can do that if indeed we can't on January the 1st. But I'd like to give a big thumbs down to Brexit, not from a political perspective per se. Don't really want to get into a remain, leave, stay, all the conversations that go on, but more a case of it is not really very great for travellers. But I guess to be vaguely positive, it could have been a lot worse, but I can't really see how it could have been much worse, to be honest. So have a happy Christmas and a great new year. Stay safe, and I hope you're enjoying our videos, and thanks again for all of you that have liked and subscribed and for all your comments, really appreciated. And I'll leave you with some more shots of this beautiful woods just outside Rouen in France, and we'll see you in the UK. Bye.